Craig Harriman, welcome back to the podcast.
Three-time guest.
Is this third time? Oh yeah, you are. Yeah, I think you might be you're the second hattrick.
Okay.
There was one other. Corey's been on it 3 times, I think. So you're the second. I'll get you a hattrick.
I was gonna say sure that must be the first person to do 3, but Corey beat me to it.
Yeah, Craig, thanks for coming back onto the show, mate. The topic that I wanted to cover was training for your health versus training for your performance. And obviously, I was based down with you down at base last year, and this is something that we spoke heavily about, even with your team in the staff meetings. Obviously, you as a coach, you program for both the programming that you do for base, but then you have your Rise program as well. So you kind of see it from both sides. So it'd be really interesting to find out your point of view. For those listening to this, I wanted to just start off by talking about why is this the topic? Why are me and you as coaches approaching this topic and talking about training for your health and training for your performance?
Cool. Is that a question? Sorry.
That was a question.
And you prepped me for this as well. I think it's something. So when you sent the topic over to me, the question, the first thing that came to my mind for some reason, I went straight to CrossFit. And I was just like, oh yeah, performance is preparing for CrossFit. Then I was just like, well, actually it's not. It's any physical task, right? So it could be getting your first pull-up. It could be running a 5K in a certain time, running your first marathon, doing anything that requires you to be able to perform a physical task. Whereas then when we look at health goals, which is probably the majority of people that we end up working with, are either some sort of feeling better, looking better. A health-related goal would be something less tangible or not necessarily something physical, like I said, running a certain distance in a certain time. I think identifying what it is you're trying to achieve and why is probably the best place to start.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up there in terms of training for health. Let's not beat around the bush. Most people, it's aesthetics, right? It's body composition, trying to lose weight, trying to lower body fat, that type of stuff.
100%. And I think that often gets when people come to me with a goal and say, I want to get healthier, get fitter, they usually mean I want to look better. And I think the more honest people can be with themselves and the reasons why that's important, and the easier it is to set yourself up for success. If someone comes to me and they're like, oh yeah, I want to look better, that might generally be because they're trying to look after their health, and having a better body composition will end up creating a more healthy life for you. And there's definitely health benefits if you've got a smaller waist to hip ratio than if you've got a bigger waist to hip ratio. There's definitely markers for better health as you get older. So looking better isn't necessarily something as vain as like, I want to look better with my shirt off. It could genuinely be, I want to be healthier. A marker for that for me is looking better and feeling better. So I think that would, for me, be considered a health goal.
Yeah, and going off on a tangent straight away, there was a podcast that I was listening to, and it was talking about, this whole movement with perhaps, obese models on the front of beauty magazines and things like that. And people saying you shouldn't be glorifying this. And there's this whole argument that you can actually be a little bit overweight and be healthy. Likewise, you could have a 6-pack and be unhealthy. And that's a really interesting thought, right? Yeah,
for sure. I think, so I Googled I know Em's done this before, and she's always incorporating mental health and happiness into health as well. And I think when you start to go down the realm of like, oh, someone's completely shredded, but they live this ridiculously tight lifestyle, that's not healthy. That's not something someone can maintain or sustain for a long period of time. And they're probably not the happiest person in the world, because they've actually probably got loads of self-esteem issues they're trying to manage as well. So looking in great shape or someone appearing to be in physically great shape doesn't necessarily mean they're happy or even that they're healthy internally either. So, but yes, I've seen a bunch of that stuff with the obese models and people arguing that you shouldn't and should glorify it. But then for all the people that moan about that, I think that's just people wanting something to moan about, because they do it the other way as well. There was a post that I saw the other day about a girl, and she was a bigger girl, and she posted a picture of herself in her underwear, slagging off one of the Kardashian girls because she'd done like a Valentine's Day photo shoot and she looked really skinny. I was like, how are you any better than anyone else fat shaming you? You're skinny shaming her, leave her alone. Like, what's the problem? And the best part was this girl had pitched like her best pair of matching underwear and had the best lighting everywhere. She was doing the complete same thing.
Yeah. Mate, let's move it on. Talking about we're going to go into a little bit more detail on maybe the kind of like the physical side of training and things to take into consideration. But I always think about training for health, training for performance, like you highlighted having performance-based goals. But in terms of just like an attitude, now you might agree or disagree. I'm sure you're going to agree with this. Like if we were to go back, 8 or 9 years before we got into CrossFit, addressing other things other than just how much we can snatch and clean and jerk, addressing things like our sleep, our nutrition, just general mood and things like that. How important is that when thinking about health and performance?
I think for both, it's really important. I think especially if people are taking performance seriously, if you look at the top tier of any sport, so if you look at someone trying to like qualify for the Olympics or someone who plays for like Man United, their amount of time they spend training is going to be way more than just like myself or yourself, which means the effort they've got to put into the stuff outside the gym is probably relatively the same compared to us as well. So like how much time do I spend making sure that I'm eating enough or doing enough movement work or mobility work? If you've got a very lofty performance goal, you're going to have to match the effort you put into recovery and fueling for that as much as you would training. I think the outside of it is probably more time consuming than the actual training. So if I've got a goal of trying to qualify for, I don't know, the next stage of the Open is my training goal at the moment. And then if the majority of my training time is going to be spent doing CrossFit specific stuff, that's only an hour a day tops. So where else can I get myself closer to my goals? I can make sure I'm sleeping enough. I can make sure I'm eating enough. I can make sure I'm hydrating enough. I can make sure I'm not sitting for too long, make sure I'm not staying up late watching TV instead of going to bed. And all those areas are things that you would have to consider. Well, I guess not, because I was going to say you'd have to consider how important is all of that stuff for your performance goal, but then that's going to have an impact on any health goal as well. If I'm not sleeping enough or creating too much stress in my body where I'm not going to be able to have a positive adaptation to my training, then that's going to have an adverse effect as well. So I think it's equally as important what you do outside of training as it is in training. But I think, like you said, the way you would approach it would be probably slightly differently. I think you'd put more stress. I'm probably getting too ahead of the conversation, but you'd probably put more stress on yourself if you had a performance-related goal than if you had something less tangible.
No, I think you summed it up right there in terms of that both the factors that you've said there, and we kind of mentioned, nutrition, sleep, hydration, they're important for both parties. But it's just interesting to see perhaps if someone's got a performance goal and they can see like there's a real objective goal at the end of it that they're trying to work towards, they might be more motivated to stick to those habits, as opposed to someone who is just, hey, I know I should be sleeping a little bit more, I know I should be drinking a little bit more water, but they can't see kind of like the finish line in sight. It's not relating to anything.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Someone else asked me this question the other day, is do you think people with goals are more motivated? And I definitely think if you've got a tangible performance goal, like on March the 11th, I'm gonna go and do is it the 11th or 12th, the Ironman. If you've got that deadline and you've got that target that you've got to train for, I feel you'd be more likely to commit to a training program and go to bed on time and hydrate enough than if it's just, I want to lose 5 kilos this year. I think there's more urgency and there's definitely more motivation there as well.
Yeah, 100%. And that's super interesting with setting goals. Like I'm going to run a marathon on Friday morning. Like, and I've been building up to that. So I've been building like literally the last like 18 or 19 weeks, me, Mark, and my friend Matt as well. We started off just running 10K, and then gradually we built up to 20K. Then we did like 30K, and we've done that a few times, and it's just been a natural progression. We didn't actually set a date on when we were going to do it, but we kind of just had a roundabout date, and it's kept us so consistent on those Fridays that we haven't wanted to miss something. And whereas before it might just be like, Thursday night is a great opportunity to have a few drinks because you're not necessarily working the next day. Whereas having that run, that Friday morning, early morning run, was just enough to stop me from, having a few too many drinks or having a late night.
Well, that's the other thing, right? As I made a note of this, is the stuff you do outside will be controlled by what you're doing in training. Because, for example, if someone was training to run a marathon and they're only going to run like 3, maybe 4 times a week, absolute max, on those 3 days, you've got to make sure you're getting the most out of those runs. If you're boozing up the night before, it's probably going to impact your performance the next day. So that in itself is going to keep you on track, just like you said.
Mate, let's move on to obviously both of our background is kind of like in the CrossFit environment, but I'm sure it applies to the fitness space in general. Having that performance goal, how effective is that for improving things like, you know, someone's goal is to have a pull up rather than try and drop 5 kg of weight. Like, where is the kind of the mixture of the goals? Where is the sweet spot for that?
Yeah, I think we always try, when everyone comes in the gym, is try and set a tangible goal that you can measure in time of, say, let's say we're going to be here in 6 months. So what does 3 months look like? What does a month and a half, or what does 2, right down to the point of like, what are we going to do today? Versus if you've got, and again, we all know weight loss as an actual number is very difficult to track, because you could increase muscle mass and lose body fat and look incredible and not have moved the scale at all. So if you've got a goal of like, hey, I wouldn't be able to do 1 pull-up, I'm going to start with, my goal this week is to be able to do 5 ring rows, and then my goal in 4 weeks is to be able to do a negative pull-up, and then my goal in halfway to that goal is to hold myself over a bar for 20 to 30 seconds, and then you can see actual tangible steps towards making that goal. Versus if it's something subjective, like a health goal, you're probably going to be, oh yeah, I've lost a little bit of weight this week, or it hasn't really moved this week, so I'm not sure if I'm making progress, and then that's going to cause your motivation to dwindle as well. So I definitely think having a goal is going to make it 100% easier for you to stay on track and make it more fun and enjoyable as well. I think it's quite hard I think the most drop off, or well, look at the other way, the most committed people we've had in our gym are always people that have had a goal or something they want to work on as something to achieve, rather than just training for the sake of training. And I'm not saying training for health is the sake of training. I just think you've got to be pretty motivated to stay committed to a training program for a long time without having a serious goal in mind.
I think as a coach, and I'm sure you'll agree, as a coach, I get so much more satisfaction out of someone who gets their first pull up, if they're like, they can, or, you know, hit a massive PR in their deadlift, versus, oh, I dropped 4 kg, or even like a before and after photo. I'm still more excited about, you know, seeing someone get their first muscle up or something like that.
Yeah. And yeah, no, 100%. And I think as well is people, when you have a tangible goal, okay, so you start with 1 pull up, and you get that pull up, then it's very easy to move the goalpost to the next goal. So you can reevaluate and go, cool, we've done that. What next? It's right. We're going to see in the next month if we can do 5 in a row. And then 3 months after that, we're going to be doing pull-ups in an actual workout. And then we can move to looking at, in 6 months, we're going to be looking at our first muscle up. And there's just linear progression through there. And it's always the next stage. And that's never really going to run out, because no one's ever going to get to the point where, yeah, I can do enough pull-ups now. That's fine. I don't care anymore. Whereas like, if your goal is more health related and there's less kind of, and it sounds like I'm bashing health related goals, but I'm really not. But if you've got, I want to lose weight, when are you ever happy? You're never going to get to the point where it's just like, yeah, that's good enough for me now. I mean, obviously if you're training just for health and you like coming to the gym because it makes you feel good and it improves my energy and it allows me to escape from work and I can blow off some steam, then yeah, absolutely, that's more power to you, crack on. But I just think if you've got that goal, then there's no real finish line. And I think that's why people get so hooked on programs like CrossFit. It's the mastery of movement. It's always like, okay, I've learned how to do a clean now. Can I do 40 kilos? Sweet, yeah, okay, let's go to 60 kilos. And then my deadlift's now 200 kilos, and it's just constantly allowing you to push. But again, I guess that's the same. Like, how many people do you know have done a marathon and then like done an ultra? I bet give it a year and you'll be like, yeah, I'm doing a 60K next.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that about CrossFit in particular, but other training methods as well. You've never completed it. It's always like, right, I've learned how to do a push-up. Now I'm going to do a handstand push-up. Now I'm going to do strict handstand push-ups off the parallettes. Now I'm going to do handstand push-ups on the rings. Like, there's always something. And that's what's really powerful about that community and class environment as well. You're probably looking around and there's probably someone in the class that's better than you that you're kind of looking up to, whether it's lifting more weight, running faster. And there's always like that thing in CrossFit of like someone who maybe just gets into it, is super skinny, is well good at the cardiovascular stuff, and their goal is to like get stronger, versus the guy who's probably carrying a little bit too much weight, ex-rugby player. They come in and they just rip like 300 pounds off the floor, like no problem. But they can't run for anything.
And then the class and the community environment as well plays into it a lot, and the whole competitive environment. I don't believe everybody should choose CrossFit as a sport, because I don't think that's the healthiest way for people to train unless they're interested in that. But then even take like signing up to running a race, so whether it's a 10K, is you're committing to a finish line or a target date to run this event, and you're going to have a time. Nobody's going to run a 10K once and then not think about trying to improve that time next time. So when you sign up for a marathon, or you give yourself that benchmark of like, this is the date where I'm going to get tested, all my training is going to be tested on this date, is I have to prepare, or I'm going to injure myself, or I'm going to look like a fool because my time is going to be horrible. And then the next time you do it, you've got something to compete against. That in itself is motivating enough to try and beat yourself, whether it's trying to beat your mate or trying to beat the next person next to you in class, or you're just trying to improve on your time from before. And putting yourself, even if it's just going to the gym and seeing you can lift more than your mates, being in that competitive environment is definitely going to, or a community environment, and making it a bit more gamifying training is definitely going to keep you more focused and more motivated.
Yeah, I can't think of how many times I've gone out and gone, I'm just going to go for a casual run. I'm not going to worry about time or anything like that. And then halfway through, I look at my watch. I'm like, oh, I'm actually on for a fast time here. Right, I'm going to speed up.
Screw zone 2, I'm going for it.
Yeah, just a red line. Mate, I wanted to pick your brains because I feel like you're a specialist in this area, just because of your experience and currently what you're doing now with programming. What are the main differences in brisket? Yeah, you're a specialist in brisket, coffee, some other stuff as well. What does a program, or when you're programming now, because obviously you have like your base program and then the Rise program as well, what are some of the fundamental like movements that you're looking to achieve in both that you feel both important for health and performance? And then, so maybe go through some of the similarities and then maybe talk a little bit more about what the performance side of that looks like.
Yeah, for sure. So I think I like to look at things in just basic compound patterns. So squat pattern, hinge pattern, push, pull, and then a certain amount of carry. And then the structures that support those movements. And that's what the principles we use are to plan our base program, which is designed to be a general health and wellness program. People who want to get stronger, feel better, look better, train for longer, make progress, and allow people to train hard safely. So if we have touches of enough of those touches in a week of making sure people's squat pattern is improving the movement pattern, but also strengthen the movement pattern as well. And we hit enough touches of that across our program for everybody, regardless of their age, ability, or goal. Likewise, on our more competitive program or our Rise program, we still use the same movement patterns as a principle. So we're looking at how many times a week we go through squat pattern, how much time we load hinge pattern, how much time we spend overhead, how much time we spend doing pull-ups, and as well as even distribution of energy systems as well. So we're looking at getting enough aerobic work, enough anaerobic work. That applies to both programs. I think the main differences between the two programs would be for a health and lifestyle program, you're looking at pretty even balance between all of those movement patterns and all of those energy systems. So you're covering as much touch points. Because if we're doing a group program, no two people are exactly the same, and no two people have exactly the same goals. So no one prescription is going to be right for each individual. But if you're working with 100 people, you've got to cast the widest net possible to try and have the most effective program for as many people as we can. If people, and some people would benefit a lot more from individualized programming or personal training when you would have something more personal, and that person may need more time working on their squat because their squat ability is not great or whatever. But we don't have that luxury when you're working with a mass group of people. So it's just the most balanced and broadest coverage of those elements as possible. When you're looking at we have a CrossFit specific program, but you could apply it to any sport, is you want to spend more time looking at the specifics of the sport or the demands of the sport. If you're a runner, you'd need to run at least 3 days a week. If you're a footballer, you'd go to football training 3 times a week. If you were a boxer and you had a boxing match and you were doing any boxing, you'd probably get knocked out and you were just doing training stuff. So where you're no longer trying to generalize and you're trying to be more specific to the sport, you then start looking at sport specific and try and replicate that within your training. So for example, our sport at the moment is CrossFit. So we're looking at 7 to 15 minute long workouts, and we know there's going to be toes to bar, chest to bar, thrusters, wall balls, deadlifts, what the standard CrossFit movements are. So we're looking at replicating the intensity and the movement density. This is a cool one. You're like, this is movement density is something we've been trying to play with lately. Is if you're capable of doing 100 toes to bar across 20 minutes, but you need to be able to do them in 100 in 7 minutes, because that's the benchmark for an open score. Is trying to increase our density. So trying to create workouts that allow you to do that many toes to bar in that period of time. That's not something that matters for someone who's training for health. who cares? You know what I mean? Whereas if your performance goal is you're looking at, cool, I'm going to get tested on this workout with this movement and it's going to last this long. And to get a good score, I have to be hitting this many reps. You have to be replicating that and understanding that in your training and then trying to match that. I think those would be your main separators.
Yeah, definitely. Mate, I'm super interested to hear your point of view on this. Where's like that? Obviously, there'll be like a grey area in between someone who's training for, just to be healthy and then training for someone who's getting into like the competitive side. And we're using CrossFit because that's our background and it just gives a good overall where a lot of people are at. Where's that like sweet spot where you see someone making that transition and what are the important factors that they need to weigh up?
We're going from health to performance.
Yeah, just, you've got someone who's perhaps doing your base program or you're in one of my functional fitness programs and they're doing 3 or 4 days a week and they're super consistent. They're starting to take a little bit more notice of the leaderboards and their weight that they're lifting and stuff. Where's that kind of sweet transition spot?
That's a good question. I think there's a bunch of things to consider. And it's when I was making notes of the questions sent over, I was like, my first answer was depends. And that's the classic coach answer. And I think if any good coach will always answer with depends because there's no like right answer for right prescription about taking the depends into the scenario, right? So I think it depends on their experience and how serious they're willing to take training. I always look at it as people, as I kind of explain it in levels. It's like, so level 1 is you've just started at the gym, going 3 days a week and enjoying yourself. Level 2, you're up to 5 days a week and you're starting to lift heavy. Level 3 is like, I'm noticing the other guys' gym getting more competitive. And then when you get to like levels 4 and 5, where it's like, I'm getting really frustrated that I can't link my toaster bar together. So I guess it would just depend on a bunch of variables. But I think your motivation and how willing you are to go and put yourself into uncomfortable situations or like spend more time in the gym because there's going to be skills you've got to work on. And then your training experience. If you've been doing it for 3 months, unless you've come from another sport and you've got a good athletic ability, you probably want to be staying on a health program for a little bit longer. And I think that's one of the problems as well, is people go, oh yeah, I want to get better at CrossFit, so I'm going to go join a more competitive program. It's just, well, how well are you squatting? How well are you hinging? How well are you recovering? How well are you handling the current level of the volume of training you're doing? Are you doing enough training and hitting your training at 100% like you should be? Are you really tired by the end of the week? Are you struggling to recover from yesterday's workout? And I think more people can get a lot more out of a general health and fitness program than they think, because they see all the shit on Netflix and all the stuff on Instagram. They're like, oh yeah, this guy's doing like 30 muscle-ups in a workout. We'll get your first pull-up first, and then we can talk about that later. And I think people, they absolutely crush one workout and they're like, yeah, I'm awesome at running and double unders. It's like, well, that's a very small part of what you have to be good at in order to be able to put yourself through the kind of requirements that take you to jump into a competitive program. And I think people misunderstand what their training requirements are for their goals. So when you get people who are, I'm training for health, and then they want to start making the next step to go into a competitive CrossFit program. It's like, do you actually care about CrossFit? Or are you just doing it because you think you want to train harder because it will make you look better? And not often it is that. And people are like, oh, I want to start doing bar muscle ups. It's just like, well, do you need to be doing bar muscle ups? Or I want to learn how to kip. There was a fellow that joined here, it was John Morgan, and he came in and he could do 10 strict bar muscle ups, and then came in and goes, yeah, I want to learn how to kip. I was like, why do you want to learn how to kip? You can do 10 strict bar muscle ups, save your shoulders, don't worry about it. And I think when you convert to a CrossFit program, so if, again, using CrossFit as the example, is if I'm going to put myself in a position where I have to do pull-ups as fast as I can or my score's not going to be as good, I'm volunteering myself to put my shoulders into funky positions at dynamic paces that are not supposed to be done that way. So in order for me to do that, I have to understand and accept that I'm going to have to spend more time recovering from that because it's going to create more stress on my body. If you're just going to train for health and fitness, just do strict pull-ups. It's so much better for you. You get so much stronger, and who cares how fast you go?
I'm so glad you brought that up. That was probably one of the last points I was going to say about just like that whole injury thing. And we've both been in the game long enough, had our own injuries, that we see people doing it, coming in, and you're just like, man, you're doing amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't overly stress about getting this movement right now. Get the basics down, because basically you're going to get injured if you don't do that. And it's such a hard conversation to have, because you want to have that right mix of being able to push someone on and encourage them. And, you know, because we were all in that position. We were both in that position before as well. But at the same time, just having our coach's hat on and going, oh man, I know this guy can get a bar muscle up, but he's actually just going to wreck his shoulders after like 2 weeks from doing it.
Totally. Yeah. And I think if someone's genuine, like, I want to do the open. It's just like, well, sweet. Let's make sure you've established a really sound base of movement before you start doing anything too dynamic or too heavy. And then we can look at making those progressions next year, because you know you're not going to do it in the next 2 weeks. But unless you're doing, it's a demands. What do you want to achieve? Okay, in order for you to achieve that, these are the demands. And then work out what your limitations are, and then from there build a program that suits. And then I think you need a coach to be on a very good program to be able to do that. But I think having a better understanding of what you actually want out of your training is probably the best way to identify what type of training you could be doing. John Britton posted something about overhead squats. He's a weightlifter, and John Britton's a Canadian weightlifter, and he's insanely strong. And he posted a picture of doing a heavy overhead squat, and he's like, overhead squats are the least functional movement. Agree or disagree? And like the poll was split, and it was like almost 50% either way. And then his response was like, I think it's the biggest waste of time unless you're doing CrossFit or you're a weightlifter. Because where in life are you going to have to be able to stabilize something overhead with your hands up here and then go below parallel? It's not functional whatsoever. And then people will see like fun stuff. Oh, I'm going to do overhead squats because they're functional. It's like, no, fucking not.
I can't remember the last time I did an overhead squat.
But why would you? Like, you're training to run a marathon. There's no requirement for it. Like, I'm going to do the CrossFit Open in 2 weeks. If I haven't been practicing overhead squats, they're going to come in a competition. I'm either going to hurt myself or I'm going to have a really shit squat. So it's functional for me because that's the demands of my training at the moment. Whereas I've been through a couple of phases recently where I've kind of stopped doing CrossFit for a little bit because injuries or whatever. And then I haven't done any kipping work. I haven't done any Olympic weightlifting work, and my body starts feeling really good. And then I'm like, I can't wait till I retire from CrossFit, because then I don't have to do any of this stuff that makes me feel shit again. And I think that's one of the, and again, this is just CrossFit as the example. Performance could be getting a pull-up, running a 5K, like playing sport, whatever. Not all sports are going to beat you up as much, but if you want to do something to a competitive level, you have to understand that there's going to be an element of recovery required to allow you to do that. And then it's probably not good for you. Like, there's the whole, I don't know, remember when you CrossFit level 1, they've got this spectrum of like wellness and they call it the wellness continuum.
Sickness and wellness, yeah.
And then there's health. No, there's sickness, health, and then fitness or competitive fitness. And it's like, this isn't healthy because of what you do to your body and the increased stress you put yourself under isn't healthy, or it's not training for health. Training to like be happy and look good and keep a lower level of body fat and all this type of shit is like health. Whereas like swinging off a pull-up bar and lifting heavy as you can isn't healthy. But if that's your sport and that's what the environment you're going to put yourself in, then that's what you've got to do. Like, training to run like a sub 4-hour marathon is probably not healthy. But if your goal is to achieve that performance, you're going to have to do things like the amount of repetitive strain injuries people get from hours and hours of running when training for ultra. That's not healthy. How many people do you know that have been on a running program, had tweaks and niggles? That's not good for you. But if you want to do that because that's your goal, you have to understand that there are going to be repercussions from that training, that you have to be able or willing to put the extra work in to recover from that to be able to achieve your goal. And I think that would be my like underlying difference between like, that's a performance goal. If you want to train for a performance goal, you've got to be willing to do the hard work to allow you to do the training to do the performance goal.
It's literally the equivalent of going on, if you like playing rugby and you play rugby every weekend, going on knowing that you might injure your shoulder from a tackle, or playing football, 100%. Someone might slide tackle you. It's not in your control. But I guess the biggest difference is that, do you know what, in a gym environment, in a CrossFit environment, there is an element of control, like, because everything there's no external forces on you. So 100%. There is almost like that, you know, and that's where coaching is important. That's where programming comes in important, and those types of things as well.
Yeah, and as I said, if you're playing a contact sport, the risk is out of your control. So in a gym, you are in control, and I think being sensible and not push yourself too hard. Like, how many times did you injure yourself when you were younger because you were able to push harder than your body's used to or is capable? Like, I've luckily never had any really serious injuries, but I've had so many niggles just from overtraining, thinking that I was made out of steel and could go really hard and really fast on workouts, and it was in my control, and it was just stuff that I put myself too hard and ended up picking up injuries and niggles. Whereas if I was just doing general health and wellness training, I probably wouldn't have had those injuries. But unless we made CrossFit a contact sport, I think, imagine doing that like kidney shots and people are doing kip and pull up and stuff.
I'm sure there's probably been something like that in one of the games events, like shoulder barging and stuff. I can't
Yeah.
remember off the top of my head, but mate, just last one before we go on to assault bike tails, which is where I ask some questions for some workouts, some hard workouts. Obviously, Matt Fraser, CrossFit World, has retired and he's released his program now. Super interesting because obviously he never released his programming and stuff before because he was set on winning and he did that obviously most times ever. What's your thoughts on that he's released this program, and obviously it's going to be an amazing program, but just because he is the best at what he does, is his program going to be superior to anybody else's? Like, I know what your answer is going to be. It's going to be if you do a program consistently from a decent coach, and it's going to get you the results that you want.
I don't think so. I'm sure that I haven't seen it. I know he's done it, but I haven't seen it in the workouts or anything. I'm sure the programming will be really good. I'm sure he's really smart. He's really experienced and worked with a lot of coaches. So I'm pretty sure his programming will be good in terms of like the volume of the program, the intensity, etc., etc. One thing I did hear him say was everything is based on your maxes or your effort. So it's not like, oh, you've got to do 50 overhead squats at 185 pounds. It's like, do this many reps at this much of your weight. So that's one thing that sounds really good about the program. But just because I'm sure everyone knows, it's just because he's an incredible athlete doesn't mean his program is going to create incredible athletes. And I'm pretty sure he's been coached by other coaches over the years. So what got him to be as successful as he is isn't doing the program that he's released on his Hard Work Pays Off program. So yeah, I think another coach posted this the other day, and it was like, there's no such thing as a bad program. It's all about your approach to training and the coaching of the program. And I largely agree with that, but I do think there are bad programs. This is a bit of a tangent, by the way, because it's not just about Matt Fraser, but I do think there's enough people can do shit programming. And then me and Rowan had a discussion on the podcast the other day about how there's good programs and there's good coaching. And if you go to a gym or you sign up for a program, surely that's got to be the minimum expectation. Like, no one should be claiming, it's like, we do good programming. It's like, of course you do good programming. That's your fucking job. You should be good at programming. Like, when you get like exceptional programming, is that good, or is that as good or as important as an exceptional coach? Because then you can have the best program in the world, but if you're an idiot and you're not scaling it appropriately or you're not doing it properly, you're not going to get the benefit out of it. Whereas if you had a really, really, really good coach, but you were doing a terrible program, what would be more beneficial? And I thought that was quite an interesting discussion, because then obviously someone who's like, I'm pretty motivated to train on my own. If someone sent me a really good program, I could go and follow that program. If it had loads of kind of like progressions that were working on my weaknesses, I'd get a lot fitter off of that program, definitely. Versus if I took the best program in the world, but I went and butchered it and did it horribly, but then if you have a really shit program, is that gonna, of course that could be bad for you. If you've got a program that's too much volume and you do too much movement patterns of the same thing in the same day. So yeah, I don't know. I'll be keen to have a look at the program and see what it's like. But I think it'll be a good program compared to anything else that's out there, like CompTrain or Training Think Tank. I think there's a couple of really good programs out there at the moment that a lot more people are jumping onto. And I think competitive CrossFit's becoming cool again with all the changes they've made to the Open. So I think what I'm hoping is more, you remember back in like, when you used to do it back in the day in 2013 through to 15, maybe 2016 before they started changing it. It was like the thing to do. It was fun. It was exciting. And me and you could do the Open and be competitive. And then they kind of made all those changes and it turned into like, you're only the top 1% of playing this game now. And then that got a little bit boring for everybody. Whereas with the changes they've made, I'm hoping it's going to get a lot more people interested in being competitive in CrossFit again. And then what that will need is a lot more programs that are accessible for people who aren't professional athletes. So programs that are 60 minutes of training 5 days a week. That's enough to make progress in CrossFit, especially if you work 9 hours a day and you've got 2 kids and you're not doing it full time. Yeah,
no, I completely agree with that. And it is exciting to see. I was just thinking there when you mentioned CompTrain, I was like, I think I mentioned this to you before, like CompTrain used to release like 3 stages in the email, and it used to be like open athlete, and then it'd be like regional, and then it'd be like games athlete. And then just me, so naive, I would do the games athlete one. And I'd do
course.
like, and the weights would be like 205 overhead squats. I'd be like, I'll just do 95 for that. And like, you know, it's just way off. Like, and I'd be like, no, the open workout isn't enough for me. When in reality, it probably was enough for me.
100%. And I think that's a point I made, note I made about talking about the whole health versus performance is, you and I know the best way for someone, if their goal is to drop body fat because they're conscious of their health or they want to look better, is to do resistance training and then some high intensity training and some steady aerobic training, and then keep it all very simple. And there's no need for people to be doing like sledgehammers and tire flips, and there's no need for people to be doing like burpees and toaster bar. We know that go for a walk and then come back and do some push-ups and some squats, or sit and do some leg extensions. People are going to start looking much better. And it just cracks me up when you see people who claim to be like, I don't know, fucking transformation coaches, or like, oh, getting best shape of your life, and they're like, they've got 50-year-old women jumping through tires. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, everybody knows you're just trying to do it because it's like, and I know there's an element of trying to keep the training interested and keep people engaged, but it doesn't matter. People are going to see through that when training stops getting them results just because it's fun and they're not making progress, not going to hang around. So I think my underlying point for the whole thing is make sure everyone's clear, the coach and the person doing the program, what the goal is. Make sure you understand the demands of that goal, understand what the limitations are, and then make the plan based around that. And I think that's the only way to make progress.
Yeah, and I'll just layer one on top of that. Like, just make sure it's something that you can do consistently. If you're going to a gym because someone told you it's the best gym and, you know, they've got the best reputation, and you actually just don't enjoy it, and it's like 25 minutes away from your work, like that ain't going to be sustainable. Like, find somewhere that's on your route home, the environment that you enjoy the coaches, you enjoy the people in the classes, like relevant to that, because that's the most important thing at the end of the day. And that's obviously what I do with Movement Wins. It's saying something is better than nothing. Doesn't matter what it is, but hey, once you get to a certain level, then it is going to be more important to get to, you know, strength training and those types of things. But just turning up is the biggest one.
Yeah, I wrote those two things down as well. It's like, as few hurdles as possible, make it as enjoyable as possible. That's the only way you're going to commit to it.
Right, I want to move on to this because this does not sound enjoyable. I asked in the on my Instagram. I got 6 replies, which is probably the most I've ever had to a question, which I was proper pumped about.
Winning.
Luca Shinklife, who he probably still is an animal if you got him to a CrossFit environment, but he was definitely fitter than he is now. His worst workout.
45.
Yeah, definitely. His worst workout for time: 30 thrusters at 95 pounds, 500 meter row. Goal is sub 2.5 minutes. What's your thoughts on that?
30 thrusters at 95 pounds.
500 meter row. Goal is to go 2.5 minutes.
What? Has he done it?
I don't know. I'll have to follow up with him. I'm guessing because he's written it. He must have done it.
If he's done that in 2.5 minutes, that would definitely be the worst thing you've ever done. That'd be horrible. 30 thrusters. What's that? Give me looking at. Yeah, no, that's possible actually. 2.5 minutes. Yeah, minute and a half. Yeah, that's doable actually.
Is that a minute and a half row? 500 meter row?
You could row. I think my best ever is like 125. So as long as you did your thrusters in less than a minute, you could pull that off. 2.5 minutes. Yeah.
That'd be horrendous.
2.5, 2.5. Yeah, that would be terrible.
A good one from Oreo, which you've done, Surfer on Acid, which is 400 meter run, 21 burpees, 3 rounds.
Oh yeah, that was a brilliant workout.
That's just, yeah.
You sent me that one during lockdown, I think it was, or not long after lockdown, and I did it with no warm up because I hadn't trained that day, and it felt great for the first round. Then the second round, on the second run, my legs were on absolute fire. That was rough.
That's a rough workout because it's literally just the definition of, like, obviously do a warm up before you do it, but there's no complex movements in there. You know, there's no kind of risk of, you know, I guess you can do poor technique on burpees, but it's generally a safe workout that you can kind of max out on.
Yeah, very easy. And what was it, like 9 minutes, something like that?
Yeah, I think sub 9 minute I set you as the goal. I think you got it.
I'll have to have a look. I think I was just under 9 minutes.
Great one from Phil, base 3 Ironman.
Oh, that was fun.
So we did, for those that don't know, we did a 15K run. So in teams of 3, all 3 members had to run 15K. First person to get back could start on the bike, on the assault bike. And we did 94K on the assault bike in a team of 3.
Was it, was it 94K?
Yeah. Oh no, it was
94K.
no, it was 84. No, what was it? I can't remember.
I thought it was 100 something.
It was around that mark. Our team did 3 minutes on, 6 minutes off for like 4.5 hours. Like it was
Yeah, it
miserable.
was ridiculous.
And then it was
Go
then
on.
it was a 30K row after.
That was it. The worst part about that for me is I can't run slowly. I'm a horrible long distance runner, and that was a really long distance for me. But I got back from the run like probably 30 minutes before Adam, and probably about 50 minutes before Rowan. So I got in, and I was like, I think the second in. I think was it Mark on your team?
Yeah.
Him and Scott were the only ones that beat me. So there were two people on the same team sharing the bike, and I sat there for like 50 minutes on my own after running 15K.
And then I
like,
came in as the third member.
Yeah, it was 45 or 15K run piece, 180K on the assault bike, and then 30K ride.
Oh, 180K. Yeah, that makes sense.
Took about 8 hours.
Some other good ones here. Murph, always a tough one. That's from Laura.
I don't know why, but I absolutely love Murph. I think it's the most fun workout. I don't know if there's the whole there's so much hype around it because of the reason behind the workout, but I thoroughly enjoy doing Murph every time. I'm not very good at it, but I just enjoy that workout.
Yeah, I'm not good at it. The only time I find it miserable is with a weighted vest, and doing 200 push-ups in a row in a weighted vest is just like miserable. Pull-ups I don't mind doing like 100, but 200 push-ups is like, I hate it.
This year, because we're in lockdown, luckily we had a pull-up bar, so we did pull-ups, but I did it no vest and partitioned for the first time, and that was so much more fun.
That's quite pleasant.
Enjoyed that one.
Yeah, that's quite a pleasant experience.
That was nice.
Kate said about one of the Spartan races, 20 obstacles, middle of the desert, across the sand dunes in 37 degrees heat, which sounds horrendous. And then Scott Wilson, 2K row for time at the DFC. You remember that?
When Craig fired. I don't remember fighting, but I remember beating him by 1 second. That was rough. That was hard. I remember literally falling off the rower and then Scott falling off the rower and him landing on my lap just on the floor like 1 second after. But I'm pretty sure I got him by 1 second.
Yeah. Have you got any?
That one about the Spartan race I was going to say is those ones, it's always the conditions, the environment. So if you do anything in sand, horrible, anything where it's hot, that's always going to make it worse. So I think environmental challenges are probably one of the best ways to adapt a workout to make it terrible.
What have you got any workouts off the top of your head?
I got a few. So I started writing these down when you asked the question. I was just, oh man, where do we start? So for me, I think long isn't as bad as short. I think me being a less enduring athlete means that my intensity drops off the longer something goes on for. So I don't find like that. The Ironman one was not the hardest workout I've ever done for sure. It was one of the most fun things I've done, but I just can't move that fast for that long, so it's not as challenging. Usually the shorter something is, the harder you can go, the more devastating it is. And like you said about sulfur and acid, the simpler it is, the less things you've got to think about, the harder you can go. So we 50 cal for time on assault bikes, probably one of the worst things you can do. 10-minute assault bike test or the 200-meter sled push test. Like and again, it's your intention. If you let yourself go and you go absolutely all out on one of those tests, then it's going to be devastating. Another one we did was a Battle of the East one year. I think it ended up being a 5K. There was a 5K run, and this happens every time there's a race. I started way too fucking fast, and basically we were running. It was me, Canfield, and Cookie, and then it was against the Alioth team, which was James Wright, Nico Rompa, and Street Hornets, like 2 games athletes, and then James Wright. They were carrying James Wright around, and then we took off, and we had a set pace which we had to hold according to like Dave's calculations, and then we took off, and then Nico went too fast. So I just stepped to Miko and stayed him, and it was about 30 seconds per kilometer faster than what we were supposed to run. In fact, I think it was even faster than that. I think we ran like a 2:40 pace for the first 500 meters. And then we were going, and no one really knew the route. And we were running. This girl starts pointing like, oh, down this way. And it was down to the beach. So it was like concrete and then down into sand. And it was probably about 400, maybe 500 meters of these 3 laps were in the sand. And we just held the same pace the whole way through. And I was literally on like about to redline, and then we lost Dave, so we all got to slow down, and then Dave had to push the catch up with us. So Dave was redlining for the whole race. And I've ever done that in a partner workout where you've been the weak link and then you don't get as much rest, or you've got to hold on. It actually happened. That reminds me, we did a team obstacle course race at Nada once. And one year, we did 2 years in a row. The first year, another guy in the team, he became the weak link and he dropped off. And if you're not the first person to drop off, the rest of the race is easy for you because you can just wait. You're running at the fastest pace, at the slowest person's moving. Easy day for you. If you're this guy and you're the first person to drop off, it is horrible. And the next year, I was that guy. And it was just a faster team and I wasn't as prepared. So we took off and holding a strong pace. And about maybe 10 minutes into an hour race, I was just like, this is not going to end well. And I just took a little break and everyone else waited for me. Then I had to push to catch up with them. And I was like, this is it. The next 45 minutes are going to be absolute hell. And I just wanted to shit myself. It was just absolutely horrible the whole time.
I've got, wrap it up. I've got, so 2K row for time, agree completely. That's probably the worst I've ever felt after a workout. Second
2K.
one, I remember, yeah, 2K. I remember doing a workout with Eva Clark back in the day, and we did like a CrossFit style. It was like 100 in a pair, 100 deadlifts, and it was like 60 kg and 135 pounds for me, 95 pounds for Eva. And it was like deadlifts, 100 deadlifts, and it was like 80 cleans, 60 jerks, 40 snatches, and 20 muscle, whatever, some of that. But it was every minute on the minute, both do 5 burpees. And like, I've never I was literally just like praying that Eva was going to do more reps. I was like, I literally can't do any more reps. Just when you're in that position. And there was that's what I like about your FIF workouts that you have down at base, like that style of workout. Because I hadn't really done workouts like that for a long time, you know, where I think the toughest ones for me are where you're working in a team and like as an obliger mentality, I don't want to let someone else down. And when you're in like a team of 2 or a team of 3, and it's really obvious when you start to slack off, whether you're tired or whether you're just being lazy. It's really obvious. They're just the most horrendous workouts because you just constantly on it. And it falls back into what you were saying about don't be the first person to drop off because you're going to pay.
Exactly.
And I know that's how you design those workouts, to just get full like transparency on who's pushing.
The weak link is definitely going to get punished.
Yeah. Okay, right, we'll wrap it up there, mate. Craig.
What was your... you said you had 3. I thought you said 3 workouts.
2K row,
Eva.
FYF, general FYF.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
There was one that stood out. It was one that you were taking, and it was like, it started at like 12 minutes. It was like team of 3, sled pushes, assault bike burpees, and then the time decreased. Do you remember that one? It was like 12 minutes, 11 minutes, 10 minutes, 9 minutes. And I just can't remember who I was with, but I was just like, I think it was the second time that I'd done it. And I was just like, this is horrendous. But when you finished a workout like that, you can't wait to do it again.
I didn't bother doing them anymore. They're too hard. I just literally, I think when you started doing them, I was like, yeah, I'll jump into a couple. I did like every other week, 2 weeks in a row, and that was it.
Yeah.
I'm not man enough to do those workouts. You lot are nuts.
Mate, where can people find you?
I can get onto we're Base3 DXV on Instagram and Base3.ie. We've got a bunch of kind of like new information up there. We're redoing our website a bit, so there's a bunch of resources on there, and actually our YouTube page as well. We're trying to put a bit more content into our YouTube page. And if anyone's doing the CrossFit Open and wants to come and do any of that with us, we've got a big group of guys doing that on a weekend during the Open. So yeah,
nice. And you got the podcast as well.
Yeah. Basic podcast. That's just it. Basic podcast. We're on all platforms too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks very much, mate.
Cheers, fella.